Hello, I'm John Tyner, owner of Tyner Property Management. We manage rental homes all over the greater Sacramento area of California. And this video is part of a series of best practices for landlords, and we're considering this question today. If a tenant offers rent in advance, does that lower the risk to the landlord? For example, tenants will come and say, I don't have the greatest credit, but I'll give you 6 months or I'll give you 1 year of rent in advance if you'll take me with my credit issues. The answer to the question of does that make the landlord more secure is really no. And the reason is security deposit caps. Strategically and legally, rent paid in advance makes the landlord no safer than if they did not give you any prepaid rent. Before we go any farther, I want to distinguish also between a tenant volunteering to pay advance rent and a landlord requiring it. A landlord cannot require advance rent beyond the first month's rent and the security deposit. Even though it's legal for a tenant to offer advance rent, it is not a good practice to accept it. So what are security deposit caps in California? Well, it depends on how many properties that you own. If a landlord owns 3 properties or more, or 1 property that has 5 doors or more, then you fall under a new law, and that new law is AB 12, and that limits the security deposit cap to a total of 1 month's rent. But if the landlord owns 2 or less rental properties consisting of 4 doors or less, so let me give you a few examples of what that would mean. 2 single-family homes are exempt. 1 single-family home and a duplex are exempt. 2 duplexes are exempt. A fourplex is exempt, but a fourplex and a single-family home, because that's 5 doors or more, are not exempt. So if you have 2 properties consisting of 4 doors or less, you are exempt, and you fall under the old rules, which is Civil Code 1950.5. That limits the security deposit to 2 times the rent for unfurnished property. There's one exception for all landlords, whether you're exempt or not. If your tenant is a military tenant, the law caps their security deposit at 1 times the rent. So here's the problem. If a tenant prepays rent in advance, 6 months or a year, or some large amount of rent, and then they move in, and then the next month, right after they move in, they turn around and say, I want all my prepaid rent back, the landlord is obligated to give it back to them under the law. That's why it doesn't make you any safer at all. Now, not all tenants know this. In fact, most landlords don't even know this. So if you were to have a tenant offer to prepay rent, they moved in, everything went normal, it's win-win, it worked out. But the problem is, if you have some kind of a conflict, this is where it gets ugly, then the tenant goes to see a tenant advocate attorney, or they go to see one of the tenant advocacy groups, and they drill down a little bit on this, and they find out then that they prepaid a year rent in advance. They're going to advise them to ask for that all back, and you lose your extra security. So the best practice is to know which deposit you fall under. What are the rules for you? Is it 1 times, 2 times? And then have strict written guidelines for qualification and stick to it. Don't change your rules for one party or another, which is really what's happening here when they're trying to prepaid rent so that you'll accept a credit report that you wouldn't have otherwise maybe accepted. And then don't assume prepaid rent will make you safer. It does not. And then I want to tell you a little bit about Tyner's record. So we're really careful in our screening process. We have those written guidelines. We stick to them very rigidly. And we are evicting less than 1/10 of 1% of our tenants every year. That means more than 99.9% of our tenants are not getting evicted each year. Our success rate is because we follow these best practices very carefully, and we have over 50 years of property management experience. We have much more to share with you, so we invite you to subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time.
John Tyner and/or Tyner Property Management do not provide tax or legal advice. John is neither an attorney nor a tax professional. This material is prepared for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax or legal advice. You should consult an attorney and/or tax professional for your specific needs and situation. If you would like to talk to us about professional property management for your rental home, you can reach us at 916-974-6003 or email us at info@tyner.com. And you can also visit our website at tyner.com.